And we've talked about neurogenesis and neuroplasticity, the function of neurons and what happens to those neurons from what Dr. Stephen Porges refers to in his book, Polyvagal Theory, as dorsal vagal freeze. When that happens, it creates problems and actual damage to neurons and to the axons, axonal injury. IASIS, conversely, helps to reverse that. How? By sending those little micropulses to the gut, which is often referred to as the second brain, and the heart and the head. And by so doing, we are able to help to stimulate the release of the parasympathetic. The sympathetic nervous system is often referred to as the gas pedal. Get you out of trouble, out of danger, fight or flight. Parasympathetic is always referred to as the brake. Slow it down, calm it down. So IASIS is believed to improve parasympathetic tone. Parasympathetic tone. And it's increasing parasympathetic tone by sending those little micropulses to the gut, heart, and head, where it is increasing the production of GABA, serotonin, endorphins, dopamine, releasing those parasympathetic neurochemicals, increasing parasympathetic tone, simultaneously telling the brain and the heart and the gut, hey, you know what? We don't need all that sympathetic neurochemistry. I know you've been locked in it and you really think it's your job to keep doing that. I'm here to tell you, you're good. We're good. Yep. Nope. We don't need any more of that right now. Yeah, we're good. We begin moving the balance away from sympathetic dominance more toward parasympathetic. Do we want that to go away? Well, we don't want the sympathetic to go away. We just want to be in harmony and balance between sympathetic and parasympathetic. The second thing is that it is, according to Dr. Ming-Chong Huang, who is the PI in the pilot study, that it is firing up cholinergic pathways, sending cholinesterase to the brain, bypassing the blood-brain barrier, firing up the microglia. From the brain up, we have with a G, we have the glymphatic system. What are the cells of the glymphatic system? Glial cells, otherwise known as and referred to as microglia. And once it fires up the cholinergic pathways, it gets into the brain and it says, yo, hey, microglia, get to work, would you please? And the microglia find the areas where the damage was, and they start binding to the excess tau, excess alpha and beta amyloid plaque. The mechanism of action of IASIS, when people say, so what is the bottom line of what this is really doing potentially for me? Well, it's increasing neurogenesis and neuroplasticity, which is helping the brain to be more optimized, optimizing brain function. It is communicating with the gut, heart, and head, helping where we have had some axonal injury from prolonged years of flooding of sympathetic neurochemistry in the brain, where we have axonal injury, axonal damage. And we know that this is the case because if we look at all the people that have been exposed to 10 bomb blasts in Fallujah or wherever the heck over there they have been, Afghanistan, whatever, these people all have insomnia. And what is paralleling insomnia? Abnormally slow delta waves. and a buildup of metabolic waste in the brain. And where there's a buildup of metabolic waste in the brain, there's damage to the axons and the dendrites, which means what? It means the nerves are not talking to each other. And if the nerves in the brain are not talking to each other, how is the brain talking to the body? And how is the body talking to the brain? It ain't. What's that called? It's called deafferentation. AFF, afferentation, deafferentation. Look it up. IASIS helps to increase metabolic clearance, getting the funk out. And then what? And then by stimulating normal, healthy delta waves, 3 to 4 hertz or cycles per second, versus an unhealthy abnormal delta wave, which is about 1 cycle per second. Well, what if it's 0? Well, then you're dead. Brain dead. 1 cycle per second. 1 cycle per second. Abnormally slow delta. IASIS, healthy normal delta, 3 to 4 cycles per second, 3 to 4 hertz per second, normal healthy delta, stimulated by IASIS, the number one most important thing IASIS does. Stimulating a normal healthy delta wave. That is really important for you to remember. So it's neuroregulating, elevating parasympathetic tone, calming down fight or flight, helping to get a person out of dorsal vagal freeze. Look up Stephen Porges, read his book, Polyvagal Theory. Very important book, very important guy. Learn the neurochemistry, learn the location and the anatomical stuff that's going on. Learn about those nerves. It's really cool stuff. And it's very, very important. Not that you have to go tell people about it, but so that you yourself understand it. I think it's really neat. And I think it's very helpful to understand, not just, well, it just works. Why do you think it works? How do you think it works? We'll have a lot more science over time. I will whet your appetite by telling you one little thing that is perfect in alignment with what I'm talking about right now. Yesterday, the day before, and the day before that, we had 3 talks with a doctor who is a neurosurgeon in Mumbai, who has been published in 30 countries, made a commitment, is getting 2 systems, and is going to be researching the neurological function of children. So we're kind of excited about that. And this guy's talking about repurposing molecules. I mean, this is one of the most fun conversations I've had in a long time. And this cat was talking about the fact that Broca's area is here, the language is there. Why isn't it coming out? Because we need to repurpose the nerves and the nerve parts of the brain that tell the lips, the tongue, the jaw, the mouth how to do what it forgot. We need to repurpose it and hook that up with Broca's area. And all of a sudden, after 24 hours in one session, mama. It makes sense. This guy's going to prove that it happens and why it happens and how it happens. I'm so excited. I'm flipping out after talking to this guy. Very promising, very exciting. So this page is really important, and this topic is really important because I want to make sure that you understand where the rubber hits the pavement. This is what we absolutely believe and have come to know in its early stages of knowing what differentiates IASIS from others, how and why it works, why it's so effective, and what it does. We may not know everything about it, but we're getting there. We're getting there. And and it's a process, and we'll get there. And so it's autoneuroregulation, metabolic clearing, firing up the microglia, good stuff, helping to improve the function of the neurons. And now you know a little bit about why. And remember, keep in mind, helping to get that abnormally slow delta replaced with healthy, normal delta waves. Healthy, normal delta, 3 to 4 cycles per second or hertz per second. Okay. All right. Moving on. Hold your questions. Remember, if you have questions, I want to know about it. Okay. Now, folks, what you're seeing on the screen here, there is an update for all of you who have since March 1st acquired of 2023. You know that we are now exclusively in the cloud, and that you access IASIS through the cloud. We no longer have the word manual offsets seen, and we do not call the bottom by what you see, but rather neuro shift. So the 5 preset protocols are Genesis, balanced energy, activation plus, and neuroshift. And to the right, in red, you can actually see the dynamic structure of each signal, what it looks like, which I think is kind of a cool thing to be able to see. And you can go back and look at any of these PowerPoints under the resource area on the website. And obviously a video will be there as well. So those are the protocols to the left and the dynamic structure in red to the right, which even says a little bit about each of them, like Genesis. Each feedback offset loop cycles up, then down, followed by a pause. Pauses can be stopped at any time. Each loop takes about 20 seconds. Total time, about 6 minutes, et cetera, et cetera. Okay. The distinguishing features of IASIS protocols. I've kind of mentioned them, but I want to review with you now. And they are the offset signal. Remember the offset, kind of like the f-stop on the camera, which determines the what? The dominant plus the offset equals the flow rate. What's another name for flow rate? The dominant plus the offset equals the stim frequency. Stim frequency or flow rate. And what else distinguishes? What look at the red to the right. What does it look? It looks different. They're all different. They all have a different structure, right? And the way that they're written changes that dynamic structure, which makes it more in Genesis. You see where it looks like up the hill and down the hill and up the hill and down the hill. Sunday drive over the hills, over the hills. But then what? Now you start getting a little complicated in balanced energy. More complicated in activation. And then in activation plus, you've got up the ramp and then boom, straight down. And then in neuroshift, which you can't see at the moment, it's the other way around. It's straight up like you're going up the roller coaster and then down. So we have like an up ramp and a down ramp. And what else? The number of exposures per cycle. New word, cycle. Every time we turn it on, it is called an exposure. Exposure to what? Stimulation. Every time you turn it on, it's an exposure. And all the way across the screen one time is called a cycle. And how many exposures are in Genesis? 15. So you see there the number of exposures per cycle. Protocols 1, 2, 3 have 15 exposures. Genesis, how many exposures? 15. Balanced energy, 15. Activation, 15. Activation plus, 10. Whoops, we had a change. In Activation Plus, there's only 10 exposures. They're longer, but there's fewer exposures. And in NeuroShift, 10 exposures, meaning you turn it on 10 times all the way across the screen for one cycle. Cool. Moving on. A cycle, there you go, 15 exposures, one cycle. And you see the yellow all the way across. That's one cycle or 15 exposures. And then to the right, you can see that Genesis is approximately 6.5. Balanced energy is almost 7 minutes. Activation's about 6.5. And then you jump up, even though it's fewer exposures on Activation Plus and NeuroShift. Activation Plus is 7.25. NeuroShift is 8.5 minutes long. Now, this gets kind of interesting. We're getting into the brain waves. Okay, and we see under delta, 0 to 4 hertz or cycles per second. But is it actually 0 to 4? No, it's 1 to 4. Because if it's 0, they're not there. They're not here. 1 to 4, delta. So if you see a 1 cycle in a whole second, that's so slow and sluggish. That's an abnormal delta wave. 3 to 4 cycles per second, normal healthy delta wave. Okay. Theta is 5 to 8. Alpha, 9 to 12, a little different than what you see on the screen. Delta, 1 to 4. Theta, 5 to 8. Alpha, 9 to 12. Low beta, beta, high beta, 13 to 15, 16 to 20, 21 to 35. We don't talk about gamma. Too fast, out of our range. We don't need to talk about gamma. Very, very, very fast wave. And generally, we're not in that wave. We are in either delta, theta, alpha, low beta, beta, or high beta. When are we? We are in delta if we are having wonderful deep sleep. But if we have insomnia, we have a problem with our delta, and we have abnormally slow delta. And we need to replace that with a normal delta wave, 3 to 4 cycles per second, which we know that IASIS is helping to do. When is an individual in theta? When they're meditating, when they're doing yoga, for example. And when are they in alpha? When they're relaxed, sitting, looking out the window, listening to music. Generally, they're going to be more in an alpha state. Theta is a deeper state of relaxation and calm. And low beta, beta, high beta, that is an active, wakeful, engaged, communicating, thinking. We're all in beta right now, unless you're passing out and I'm boring the heck out of you right now, and you can't stay awake because I'm droning on, and okay, maybe you're drifting into the alpha theta range. Okay. But if you're with me, you're in beta. Okay. Important to kind of give you that little intro into that. And what's our little equation? The dominant. And there's the dominant. You can see it jutting up. That's what tells you that it's the dominant, plus the offset equals the stim frequency. So you see the top peak, the dominant, plus the offset pre-written in the software equals the flow rate or the stim frequency, the second highest peak. There are no good or bad brain waves. They're kind of like the gears in a transmission. The more flexible, the more well. The more rigid, the more ill. And I like this. This is kind of fun. This really begins to give you the really strong idea and understanding of what exactly these brain waves look like if you're looking at them in an EEG tracing. So how frequently do you see this wave in 1 second? Well, you see it 3 times. 1, 2, 3 loops, right? 3 loops in 1 second. How many hertz? 3 hertz. 3 loops, 3 hertz. How tall is it? Well, it's 3 hertz every time, but the amplitude changes. We have an amplitude of 1, 3, and 9. Gives you a good idea of amplitude. So let's just take a look at what each of these looks like in an actual EEG tracing to give you an idea of what you're looking at on the screen. I don't intend you to memorize it, but it's good to begin to know what you're looking at. What does delta look like? Kind of like that, right? And what does theta look like? There you go. Alpha, low beta, beta, and high beta. So you'll see a lot of patterns look like beta and high beta because you're seeing people anxious. You're seeing people ramped up. You're seeing people fascinated by what the heck it is that you're doing and want to know what it is. That's why you're going to be seeing a lot of that. And as they calm down more, you'll see people move toward low beta, alpha. You'll see it. We do every day. And there in a big reading actually gives you an opportunity to look at a section of alpha and a section of beta. So you can begin to differentiate what you're looking at. And you know that that's the IASIS device. And of course, you know that it's helpful to use a surge protector. And I want to make sure to point out, I always keep the device, I keep the wire wrapped up accordingly because it will wear. There is a wear point on the back of the device, and you don't want it to wear out. And it's pointing at what illuminates as a little green light when the IASIS device is on, is turned on, and is functioning properly. It will turn green. Always keep that wire tied nice and tightly. You don't need to unravel it. Don't do it. That is a serious wear point. You don't want that to happen. Yes, there are batteries. Open up, take a look at the batteries. Make sure you check it every 2 weeks, 3 weeks, that there's no corrosion in there. Trust me, you don't want this corroding in there, folks. And if you find it corroding, get those batteries out of there that are bad, put new batteries in, but first take a little alcohol wipe, clean off the sort of the little lead heads that the battery touches. Make sure it's very clean in that housing, in that compartment. And you can see where the actual batteries go into the device, and you can see the polarity shown as negative or positive. We're not going to spend a lot of time on the electrodes, but you can get electrodes from RhythmLink, and we have the resource on the private website. We're working on getting you another company, a competitor, so that we make sure you always have the best of everything. And we do use 4 leads and a ground. 2 that are active leads that move around the head, a pair that is the reference leads that goes pre-auricular to the right and left, right in front of the tragus, the little flap of skin outside the ear, and the ground that goes at the base of the collar of your shirt, right? Right to the, I should say, the top of the collar on your skin there. And I fold down the collar, always fold the collar down. And that's where I put the ground. The A- and the B- are the reference leads. The A+ and the B+ are the active leads. And I'm going to tell you right now, you do not need to worry whether you have the A channel on the right or the B channel on the right or left. It doesn't make any difference. Pay no attention to this number goes on this side, evens over here, odds over here. It doesn't matter. It makes absolutely no difference whether you put the A channel on the right or the B channel on the right. Makes no difference. And the active are A+, B+. And the leads are moved from pair to pair, site pair to site pair, accordingly, according to the International 1020. But we're not going to look at this video right now. There's no need to. And the electrodes fit into all these little holes. And you can see the label on top. It says G, G for ground. To the left and right of that, A-, B- for the reference leads. And to the left and right of that, the active leads. We'll pass on that for right now, like I said. Okay, so what color is the ground lead here? The green. The green is the ground. How are leads in the A- and the B- ports? What do we call them? And we call them the reference leads. And the ground is affixed to the back of the neck. And right above the ground, by about 2 inches at the base of the hairline, we call that B as in boy, Z as in zebra, BZ. And the final pair would be BZ and FPZ, not NZ right between the eyebrows, but up an inch to an inch and a half. And that up to an inch and a half is called Frank Paul zebra, FPZ. And then on the back, BZ with the active leads. So we do right and left, then we do front to back at the very end. Okay. You can change and use any color you want, anywhere you want. But the green in that one happens to be the ground. And there's an electrode. Probably best not to touch it while the system is on. It'll give you a lot of energy, sometimes more than you want. Some people are sensitive, EM sensitive. You don't want to touch the wires because it'll also cause an artifact. So I would steer clear. Very much so. So you can see where there's black below the little waffle head. And I would make sure that you hold it by the black, not the blue wire at the bottom, because if you hold it by the wire, it'll pull right out of there. And then you're going to have to twist the wire, stick it back on, finish the session. Better to hold it by the black. And that way, if it falls out, the rare time that it will, you'll be able to fix it, finish the session, and then change all the electrodes out. And the international 1020 are what we borrow our sight pairs from. And you can see 3 pairs here, F3, F4, F7, F8, and FPZ, BZ. The electrode letter and corresponding lobe, F for frontal, P for parietal, T for temporal, and O for occipital on the back of the head. F frontal, T temporal, C central, or Z. The Z line splits the right and left hemisphere. So I call this FPZ and BZ, right at the base of the hairline on the Z line, the center line. P for parietal, O for occipital, and again, Z refers to the center midline. And we don't worry about left, right, odd, even, makes no difference. None at all. And we're going to skip this video. You can watch it on your own. And these are all the goodies that you need to use. And hopefully we'll have all of them. And you can go back on to the website to review that list. You've got everything in your supply kit from when you acquired your system. And if you need more of anything and can't find it, let us know. We can point you in the right direction. Care and maintenance. I would always use a surge protector. And this says the IASIS laptop should not be used on the internet. Let me be clear. We don't sanction or recommend that you use it to go surfing and researching things. However, 2 years ago, our IT department made the assertion, and we changed to be sure that individuals are, in fact, downloading the latest drivers and what else? Antivirus. So make sure that you actually go through and that you do that. I like to use an electronic handheld mouse. Kensington is one of them. There's a number of them. If you look up green laser presenter, you'll find the Kensington device and others that are similar to that. And the infrared light. The infrared light is 940 nanobeam, and it is a wonderful potentiator of IASIS. It actually sends the infrared light into the mitochondria, the stuff of energy, and it communicates with the mitochondria, telling it to release nitric oxide bound to the mitochondria in the white blood cells. As it releases nitric oxide that had been bound to the mitochondria in the white blood cell, the nitric oxide dilates the arteries, carrying blood away from the heart. So the infrared light is a potentiator. It is speeding up the flow of all the nutrients in the body. Very helpful. Very, very helpful. So yeah, I generally won't put the IR device into the hands of children. And there's a little sensor on the side of the infrared light. And if you put your hand, put it over, your palm, not just a finger, because light can seep in. And if light hits it, it turns off. If it's dark, hidden in your palm, the infrared light goes on. And when you cover it, I wouldn't use your thumb. I would put it in your palm. And then if you shine it onto a selfie, you'll actually see it on the screen as a pinkish purple glow. That's how you'll know that it's on. And I've told you a little bit about that and how to use it. You can also put it on a tripod. And by putting it on a tripod, shoot it at the cerebellum, which is a great way to handle it for kiddos. Highly recommend that. So we have finished the first little module, and now we will take a little break for lunch, and then we will come on back in an hour. It is now 5 after. Let me just make sure. Yeah, it's 5 after noon. Let's come back in an hour at 1:05 Pacific, 4:05 Eastern, and accordingly. And I will look forward to seeing y'all in an hour. All right. Thanks so much. See you in a bit. I'm going to leave this open so you won't have to worry about establishing another connection, and you can just leave it as such if you would like. All righty. We'll see you guys in a little while. Okay. The assessment, beware of HIPAA, all very obvious stuff. Protocols. You know what the protocols are. We've talked about that. You know what the site pairs are. And now we're going to show you a three-dimensional view of the International 1020 site pairs on the head. Very, very important. I like this particular image because it shows you 3D. Okay, folks, now we're going to get down to it. We use a basic 3 site pairs, basic 4 site pairs, and then we have a variable 5 that in some rare instances, infrequent instances, we may use that. We may use these variable 5s, but for the most part, when I'm doing sessions, for the most part, the majority of those people, I'm using basic 3, which is F3, F4, F7, F8, FPZ, BZ. Where is that? I'll show you. From the eyes to the hairline, F3, F4. Soft spot on the temples. F7, F8, and NZ is here right between the eyebrows. FPZ, BZ. On the Z line, splitting the right and left hemisphere, or the center line, right? FPZ, Frank Paul Zebra, BZ. And then the ground is 2 inches below that in the back. And the reference leads come up over the ears, sticking into the paste right here. Right at the point that you needed to look. Okay, so we have F3, F4, F7, F8, FPZ, BZ. We call that the basic 3. Now we have the basic 4. And the basic 4, F3, F4, FZPZ on top of the head. On the Z line, FZPZ, F7, F8, FPZ, BZ. How do you find FZPZ? From the tip of the ears to the top of the head, and now 20% in front, 20% behind, and that is what we call the basic 4 Psy pairs. So protocols, those are the preset written information, folks, preset written information that tells the device exactly how to manage itself within the construct. Okay? Very, very, very important. The protocols. That changes the dynamic structure of the offset. Okay. Then you have Psy pairs like F3, F4, F7, F8, FBZ, BZ. Pair 2. That's Psy pairs. Okay. Moving along. Exposure, every time you turn it on, it's an exposure. You know that. Okay. And there's an example again, just as a review. Every single time you have the accumulation of little light blue and dark blue squares and a little black square in between with a little white space, every time you do that, you are doing an exposure. And all the way across the screen is one cycle. So you can see the exposures really up close and personal. And yeah, very, very good. All right, moving forward. Examples of all the exposures. Continuing with the principles of progression, how you progress. We increase exposures to add time. I'll say it again. The number one thing that is our responsibility is to find the sweet spot, the point at which they respond, minus the reactivity, tired, wired, spacey, headache, nauseated, or the exacerbation of a symptom. If they react, is it bad? No. Why? Because a subset of every reaction is a response. It's really important to set appropriate expectations so that they know likelihood is it's going to get a little bit worse before it gets better. And you can be as subtle with that or as, very overt with that concern. Okay. So the number one thing you want to increase, you want to add time. Add time.